In this video, we're going to set up video calling in our Facebook Messenger application. So the way it's going to work is you're going to open up your friends list. You're going to click on the video call button. You're going to make a call. It's going to use WebRTC, which is a client-to-client connection. We're going to make use of our chat server, so the socket connection, so that we can send the particular room that we're in to the friend that we're calling. Then they're going to see the receive call notification screen on their phone. And if they answer the call, it's going to accept and they're going to join the room. And then both of their video streams will be in the actual chat itself. So that's how we can use WebRTC to do video chat in our application. And we're going to make use of the VideoSDK because there's a lot of complexities with WebRTC, and using a third-party library is going to help simplify that for us. Okay, so we're going to need to start off with the installation of VideoSDK. So you can just come to the docs and go to docs.videosdk.live, and we're looking in the React Native section. So basically, I would recommend doing it for one platform at a time. So I'm going to start off by doing things with Android. And you can look at the installation here. And I'm going to go through... Actually, I'll leave this to the viewer to just go through this link and just install things and get through the setup, because it's pretty trivial. It's just copying and pasting things into the stuff. But I'd recommend doing it for the device that you have, if you have a mobile device. So I have an Android mobile device, so I'm going to focus on that. But, you know, it's just as easy to go through this documentation for the iOS device if you have one of those. So I'm going to go to Visual Studio Code here, and I'm just going to start off by installing a couple of things. So if I open up the terminal, I'm installing the VideoSDK.live React Native SDK, and I'm also installing the Video SDK.live / React Native in Core Manager. So you just need to get those two packages. And then you also need like a dev dependency here for the React Native.env. Now you don't have to have this, but I just like to have my tokens and stuff separated out of the actual main source files. So let's go ahead and collapse that terminal, and I might make this a little bigger. Maybe something like this. So at the root of the folder, I've made a env.d.ts file, and this will allow us to declare a module and export the things that we're going to export from our .env file, and that way we'll be able to import it easily from our files from this @env path here. So I'm going to have a video SDK token, so you're going to need to generate a token, and it's all in the documentation. So you will need to just log in. You can log in with, or make an account on the Video SDK. They give you 10,000 minutes of free time. And if you're making a video app where videos are like a feature in your app, but it's not the main feature, then you'd probably just want to use a third-party library like Video SDK, because you know you're going to spend months building it and it's going to end up a little janky. It's best to just offload that to a third party, unless of course it's your only feature of your application. Then you'd want to go a little lower into the WebRTC stuff. But just know it's going to take a bit of time to be able to do that. So I've also got this IP address, and the reason I've got IP address is because we're going to, in addition to using the emulator, I'm going to actually use my native device. And it's easier to connect. So on the emulators, you can connect with localhost, but when it's on the device, it's easier to just connect with the same network. So you can just create a .env file here.
You can just type in your token, whatever it is in here, and then your IP address, you can just type whatever that is in there. Then we'll just quickly come to the Babel config file, and we've just added a few things. We've just added this plugin here for the React Native.env. And we've also just sort of turned this into a function. So rather than turning array or an object, we're still returning that, except we're just having this callback sort of thing in here, where based on this parameter here, where we can set the cache to true there. So that'll just help for this. So then now we've installed everything and we're all set up. We've followed the documentation. Now we can go ahead and just go to the index in the root of our project, in our React project. And we can just go ahead and we can import the register method from VideoSDK. And then we can just go ahead and we can register this. And this is important that this is in the index file, not in any of your components or anything. Otherwise, there'll be some rendering issues and some issues associated with this. So we just want to do this in the index. Then I'm going to make a quick adjustment. Just on this line here, before the emulator on Android was this 10.0.2.2. But I've got this IP address here. So basically, since we are using, we're testing things on the device, I'm just importing that IP address from @env, and then I'm going to use that as our base URL. So then what I'll do here is I am just going to come to the models file shared in friends here. And I'm just going to have this interface here with the core details. So when you make a call, there's a particular meeting ID that the call has. And then in addition to yourself, there's another user in the call. So we're going to have the friend ID user to be able to determine who that is. And there's also the call response. So they can either accept or decline the call. So I've just made an enum with the call response there. And then I can have when you make the call, essentially, you're emitting something to the client, to the server, based on the friend ID. And then based on the friend ID, look up to the socket. The friend's ID socket is there, and then it emits something back to you. And then they'll tell you if they've actually accepted or declined. So they'll just say this status here, which is either accepted or declined. And then we have the call activity. So there's different states you can have. So there might not be any calls at all happening. You might be receiving a call, or you might be requesting a call, or you might be accepted a call. Now, I haven't had the decline call, because if you decline a call, it just goes back to the none state. So there's no call happening if the call's been declined. So then we come to friends context here. And again, we've just sort of adjusted this URL here to have the IP address here. So we can makes the request easily on our devices. Rather than the emulator. So essentially what we can start to do here is we can actually start to, hook into our chat, WebSocket connection here. So I might actually just go to the Nest.js project. And in the Nest.js project, let me just close this up. Essentially, we want to have the core details, DTO. So what we're sending to the backend is, okay, well, we need the meeting ID, because when we create the meeting, we're using VideoSDK, and then that's going to give us back the meeting ID on the front end. So we need to communicate that to the other person in the chat room. So we send them the meeting ID with the friend ID. And then we have this logic here. So on the event start core, we have the core details passed in. We just check if the user and details are there. If they are, we just go ahead and we get the friend's details. And basically what we want to send back is we want to send something to the particular friend, and the friend will need to be aware that the other person in the call is this person. So we put the friend ID as the particular user that made the request. So user A makes a request to user B, and then user B will need to receive the request from user A, which is essentially what we're doing there. The meeting ID will be the same. And then we can just emit that to the particular friend's socket. So they'll be on a different device and they'll need to, receive that. So then we have this receive call, which we'll be able to handle by having a pop-up. There's also declining the call. It's, basically, we want to get the friend's details again. And then we just say, okay, well, if the person declined, just let the other person know that they declined, and likewise we've accepted. Potentially this could have been in one method here, but I've just got it here in two. So we got the ability to accept the call, decline a call, and start a call. Now, none of this stuff is actually related to the streaming of the call. This is just because in WebRTC, the communication's from one client to another, but you just need a way to be able to tell what room you're in. So all this stuff is just having this, we're just making use of the chat WebSocket stuff that we've already created for our chat messaging stuff. And we're just leveraging that to be able to communicate the room and the response to calls. So if I go back to the React project, React Native, we can see that in the friends context, we're listening to the chat socket. We're looking for the receive call. So basically, we know we're going to get the core details, and we can just set the core details, and we can also set the core activity. So we also need to avoid any data leaks by turning the WebSocket off on unmount. And then we have the chat socket that's listening for the core response. It's either going to be accepted or declined. If it is accepted, we set the core activity to accepted. Otherwise, we set it to decline. So we will need to, I think we need to set the state for that. And then we can have the core response off here. But we can also have methods here for the starting of the core. And of course, in the context here, I've just added the core details and core activity. So that's pretty standard. So this start core here, you're going to start the core based on the core details. Then you just add it here. And then the function is just basically emitting the start call with the details, but you need to be able to make the call from another component. So we just provide that. And then we also want to be able to respond to a call, which takes the response. We add that to the context. And then we have this function here, respond to call. So if they accept the call, we let them know we accept it. If they decline it, we let them know they decline it. Again, this probably could have been one method here. So you can refactor that if you want, but it's not really a big deal. So then we come to the screens. This is where all of our routes are. And we need to have access to the context. So we need to know the call activity, because depending on if we're in a call or not, It depends on if we're showing a particular page or component or not. So we can determine if we're receiving a call, if that enum is equal to receiving. And we can also determine if they're in a call, if they're ever accepted or requesting it, because when you make the call, it's going to immediately start to open your camera and put you in the room. Yeah, that's the logic for being in a call or receiving a call. Now, if you're not in a call and you're not receiving a call, then you just show the main pages, which has the tabs at the bottom to navigate to the different pages. And we have this receive call route here with the receive call screen, which we haven't just created yet. And we also have this core ID screen or core screen that we're going to create. So let's go to the core screen. So basically we just want this safe area view on to ensure that everything's within the contents of the screen. I'm just going to put flex 1 on so it stretches things to the full height. And then just background color here. Now we can get the user details from the auth context and the core details from the friends context. And then if you have core details and the user details are there, we can use the meeting provider. Now this is coming from, where is it coming from? It's coming from the VideoSDK Live. And this just gives you all of the information to use within your video calls. So we have this provider around the component that we're going to use for that. So we just pass in, we need to pass in the VideoSDK token. So that's coming from at env. And we pass in a config object, which has the meeting ID. Because we have the meeting ID after we join. So we'll need to go back to the video page. So let's go there to the chat page. So when you're in a particular chat, you're talking to somebody, at the top right, there's an option to click the video button. And essentially what we're doing here is we're creating an async function here. And then we're going to set the core activity to requesting. And then we're going to need a function here to create the meeting. So essentially we can take the VideoSDK token. We can do this in a separate request file. And we'll have a function called create meeting, which is async. And it returns a string. It's returning back the meeting ID, which is a string. So we just make a fetch request. I'm doing this separate from the other API calls with Axios just because we're contacting a third party and I didn't want any of the intercepts to interfere with that. So basically this API endpoint here, the VideoSDK endpoint /rooms, this will create a room. It's a post method and you just chuck in the authorization with the actual token that you have there. The content type is JSON. And then the body, we're just passing in an empty object that's stringified here. That's just from the documentation essentially. And then what you get back is the room ID. And then we're just going to return that room ID. So with that room ID in the chat here, when you start to make a call, so you click on a friend that you're chatting to and then you want a video call, you click on the video icon, you create a meeting using that API. Now, if there's no meeting ID, something went wrong, we're just catching that to make sure we don't error our application, and then we're just returning, but it should give you something back. And we can actually create a details object by getting the meeting ID that we get back, and then also the friend ID, which we're getting from the context. So we can just use those details to set the core details, and then we can start a call here. And then we can navigate to the particular core screen. So if we go back to the core screen, we can see that for that core screen to have that information, for it to be able to make the requests and all that sort of stuff, we need to wrap it with the meeting provider. For us to make the call, that's okay. The API call to make the room, but for us to consume that information from within a component, we need to wrap it in a provider. So we can get the meeting ID based on those core details that we've set. And by default, we'll just say the mic enabled is false. You could have a bit of state here to manage the mic enabled and webcam enabled to false and true. It's just a simple switch you can click on and off, and then you could show like a microphone that's crossed out or not. But that's pretty trivial. So basically, and then for the name, I didn't actually put the name here. You might have seen in the video that I put 1 and 2. I was going to do like a lookup where it's like if the user is the user, filter them out of the participants in the conversation. That way, like, you only see the other person's camera. But then I just decided, well, it's fine with the split screen, because most of those other things are just styling and trivial tweaks that you can make. The main thing I want to focus on is actually just getting the functionality to make the web calls, video calling. So yeah, you just wrap the meeting provider with the meeting view here. So we come to the meeting view, which is where we're going to, actually this is where things are going to happen. And I'm not really sure why this errors. For some reason there's an error message. I don't think the VideoSDK has a TypeScript. I tried doing this npm install this, but I don't think that exists. And you could declare your own module with the things, but you won't even get the type safety. So I'm just going to ignore that here. But from there, you can have this use meeting hook, and that gives you the ability to join or leave the meeting. You can also change your webcam on and off and toggle mic. And then of course you need the participants, which is the important thing, other than joining and leaving. So I've just got this like bit of state to see if they've joined or not. Then in a use effect hook, when this meeting component renders, I'm just basically saying, well, if they haven't joined the conversation, join them. But because this can re-render, they might already be in the conversation. I'll just have this flag there to exit out of that if they're already there. So we'll just join the call once. And then on dismount or unmount, we just leave the call here. So this is just a wrapper function for what they give you there. It's just the way I've done it, where I want to enter the call as soon as I enter the room, opposed to the documentation where you actually got to click a button to enter the room. I just needed a nice way to do that. So we can get and by the way, we take in, we get the participants from the hook here. So this actually, the participants actually gives you a map back rather than like an object or something. So the way it works is all of the keys are the IDs, and then the values are related to, like, have nested data structures involved. So we just get all of the participants' keys, which is just all of the participants' IDs. And then we can just have this function here where, we can just return some JSX where we're returning a participants list based on those IDs. And then we'll also want to have some controls. So we're going to pass in the ability to leave or change the webcam or toggle the mic, these sorts of things. So essentially what we can do is we could start off with the controls. So we just pass in these things here. Now again, you don't have the TypeScript stuff from the package, so I just put these to the any type. You probably want to do this a little better But it's not clear. I didn't want to go through all of the, the GitHub repo to look at what things were and stuff like that and figure it out without the TypeScript casting there. So I just put everything to any. Then I'm using the friends context, so we have details related to that. Then I got this navigate method, because if you exit the call, you want to navigate back out of the call screen. Then I just got a little bit of styling here on the view. Essentially, I've just styled everything as a row, so that way I can easily have the three buttons that I'm going to have at the bottom of the screen in a row. With a bit of background color. I put a height of 80 there, a bit of opacity, a bit of padding. And then I've just got these icons. So I got the icon button. I've just got these two things here just so you doesn't complain, because they're mandatory. So basically, if they click the video button at the bottom, it will toggle the webcam. Now, I haven't actually been bothered to show a different icon. Probably would have been better if I had like a video cancel button or something like that when it toggles, and then manage the state and then display that or not. But that's pretty trivial. I'll leave that for you guys to do if you want to do that. So we've got the microphone, same thing there, but with a toggle mic callback. And then we have this end button, which is the phone button. So we just leave here. Then I set the call activity back to none, set the call details to null, and then navigate back to the particular room that I was in before I made the call. Or if someone else called you, then you end the call, it goes back to that chat room. So in addition to the controls, we also need the participants list. And the participants list, this is just all of the participants. So I'll pretty much just map through these and just give the participant view here. So potentially I could have just done this in one component, but if I wanted to add some extra stuff there, like filtering out my participant, and which is me, so you only see the other person, and I don't know, maybe you want to multi-join rooms with multiple people, so you create a new room chat or something like that. If you want that sort of functionality, this would probably be more useful, this component. But for the participant view, we get the participant ID, and we can use the use participant hook, because remember we got that provider wrapping around all of these components here, so we can access this through the actual meeting that VideoSDK provides for us. So basically, they can be in two states: either their webcam's on, and their webcam streaming. So it might take a few seconds. You might see this in the video that it takes a few seconds to actually make the connection. There's a couple of reasons for that. I think one is just because you're in development mode on an emulator, and your device through a USB connection. So I think, just that in itself, API calls are slow. But then also we're using a third-party library, so because we're using a free tier, it probably has like some cold starts or something like that, some optimizations. So they're saving costs. So the first time you make the connection, it's a little slower. But you'd like to think that in production that things would be working faster if the third-party service, exclusively focuses on that service. So basically, they have this component here from VideoSDK called the RTC view. You can just put in your stream URL, which is a new media stream, the webcam stream track. So you use a hook to get that, to get the stream. So basically, the information that's being sent, so the other person can see that in visual form. So you're sending a whole bunch of data so they can see that. And then you can connect to that media stream. And through this component here. And I'm using object fit cover, so it covers the screen. Flex 1, so it stretches for the full height. Border I don't need, I was just using for debugging, doesn't actually work. View, so if they, if their webcam's not turned on or the webcam stream isn't running, then we just have this backup thing where it's a background with a gray container. And then you can just show the display name. You could show the display picture and their name. I actually put the display name as their ID number just because for development purposes, it was easy to tell who was who when things weren't, when things weren't finished. So, and then I was going to use that for other things, but essentially that's how you display the video streaming. So we've already seen the request, seen the chat. Probably the final thing to look at is actually how we use that, or how do we know that we're in a call or we leave a call. So we get the call activity in this chats component. So I put this on the chats component. So basically I got this use effect tool. And if you're receiving something, you see this, it navigates to the receive call page. Now, this means that you'll only receive a call if you're on the chat screen, which is the list of all the chats. But probably this would be better if it was just a little bit higher up, just one level higher. So, if they're on any screen, you can receive the call. I'm not really sure why I put it here. I think I just did it for simplicity because I was just wanting to get something working. But yeah, you could just move that to another page. And then finally, there's the receive call page. So when you receive the call, essentially we're returning just a regular page, which is going to have some styles. We use the friends context, and we use the navigate hook. And then what we do is, well, we're receiving a call from a friend. So we look through our friends, and if the friend ID from the call details matches one of our friends, which it should, then we have the found friend that we can display its information. So just around the container for the view, again, we put everything to flex 1 and we just center everything. And then we just use this avatar image from Paper, which has this source. So I've just gone ahead and just used this random user thing again for the particular ID. So we also have this name that we want to show. So the name is going to have a font size of 40 and a weight of 500. So I have this text here below the image for when they call. And, it just shows the first name and the last name. And then on the next line, it just says video call on Messenger. And then I have this response to call container. So, the hang up button or the answer button. So that's just going to be a row, space around, flex n, 100% width, a little bit of padding there. And then we can use that class to show both the what is this? The hang up button, which is going to have a red background. It's going to be a circle with a white phone icon, and which is going to be a white phone. And then we have this respond to call, where we can just pass in the call response is decline. And then here we're just navigating back to the home page. So you could just navigate back to the previous page if you wanted. And then we have this icon button here, the second one, which is the video icon, which is going to have the green circle, so the accept button. So if they accept the button, they accept the call, they just respond that they've accepted the call. And then you navigate to the particular call screen. So that's pretty much how video calling works. So just to recap from the start, because we sort of worked a little bit here, a little bit there. Basically, the user, he's going to be in a particular chat. So let's say I'm logged in as user A and I want to call user B. I go to the user B chat and then I click on the video icon at the top right and I want to call them. That creates the meeting, and then I enter that particular chat room, and it sets all the details and stuff like that. And then if you go to the friends context here, that actually, where is it? That has this method here to start a call, which just emits something to the back end with the meeting ID. So when you start a call, you get the ID of the meeting because the other person needs the meeting to be able to enter it and enter the video call. So you just pass that into them for the particular user that made the call. And then you go back into, so then the user B, he'll be listening because he's got a WebSocket connection. And he can actually listen for receiving a call. That will open up the receive call page because of it's setting this activity to receiving. And then if they respond, they can respond yes or no, or answer or not answer. Then the other user, user A, the original user, they're also waiting for the call response. So if their call response, if they get a call response back, and remember they're the people that created the call, so they have the call details set, then they can determine if the other person's entered the video call, and then they can just start a video call like that. So that's essentially how video calling works in WebRTC. It's communication from device to device, but you need to have a way to be able to determine what room they're in, which is where the WebSocket stuff helps with that, but it's not how the actual sending of the bits works. It's just the information needed to enter the room for the streaming to happen from one client to another. So yeah, we've seen how we can do video chat. We've seen quite a lot actually. We've done authentication, chats, online presence, video calling. Of course, there's more like details that could be done there, but I just wanted to provide pretty much everything, like all of the core features and the building blocks that you need, and then everything else in the application can pretty much be made. It's just more of the same using those fundamentals. So that's really what I was hoping to achieve in the Facebook Messenger clone series. Yeah, thanks so much if you watched the whole thing. If you watched the whole thing, let me know. And also let me know what you want to see next, guys. So please subscribe to my channel. I like to do these big projects. And yeah, and if there's anything else, maybe some more Nest.js particular stuff or anything at all, let me know, guys. And thanks so much for watching. Cheers.